Hi everyone, it's me, the Shakta Oracle, and today I'm going to talk to you about pujas and altars in Hinduism. And if you watched some of my videos already, or you followed me on Instagram, or you know my work in the last years, then you know that I talk a lot about being West Indian, Indo-Caribbean, and like how that has affected my relationship to my roots, to my South Asian roots, and my relationship to Tantra and Hinduism. So I'm going to share based on that lens and how I connect and what I learned from my family and things like that. And so if you know anything about Guyana or the West Indies or Indo-Caribbean people, like we were colonized by the British, and so our relationship to our heritage is a little fragmented by colonization, and because of that, it is really important that we continue to reclaim our voices in the space of talking about our traditions and allowing space for us to reclaim it, allowing space for us to build new relationships in our current lives by tuning in and touching upon that space within and bring that forward. So it's really special, I think, for me to do that, and I feel really blessed to be able to share it with you on this platform. So I'm going to share first a few things that you might find on a Hindu altar. So one of them is called a murti, and this is a murti. It's basically a statue, an image of a god or goddess, or sometimes an elephant, or usually that's what a murti is. Well, I'll show you another one. Usually they're in color like this, or you can find ones like this that are made in brass or some type of metal, and they're vary in size. They could be really tiny like this, or they could be as big as a person. They could be 6 feet tall. And so the different sizes, you'll find in different places. If you go to a temple, you'll see an enormous murti, like as big as the building inside of there sometimes, or in front. And then if you're in a home altar, you'll find tinier ones like this. This one was actually my grandmother's, so I inherited this one. And there is something really special about the murtis. They're believed to hold energies of spirit, and the more you pray on them, and the more you worship, and the more you connect to these murtis specifically, the more the energy is imbued in it. Just like if you watch the video about mantras, like it speaks to chanting on beads, and that the beads of the malas actually collect the mantra and the energy of the mantra and the healing energy. And this has the same energy. It's like the vibration from the worship, the attention, the devotion, the prayer, the bhajans, which is the music, the singing, mantras that you chant, incense that you light, like all of it goes into this space, and it keeps bringing like sparks of that bigger cosmic flame into this space. And we do that with our bodies too. When we treat each other well, when we treat ourselves well, we're bringing in spirit into that space. So I know there's a lot of complicated reviews based on like Christianity and things like that about idol worship, but this is actually, if you're studying the philosophies of spirituality and the occult and metaphysics, and you're learning about how energy is in all things and it travels through all things, then this practice of having a murti on your altar will make sense if that's the road that you've taken. Or if you're Hindu or Buddhist, or if you are practicing Ifa or Santeria or Palo, then you might have deities, images of deities in your worship. Another thing that you'll find is like these little things. I don't really know what they're called. They're like tiny little guglets. Like I don't really know the word for it, but they're these little brass, like you can put water or like milk and turmeric and honey, sometimes like rose water or different things depending on what you're going to use in your puja. And your puja is basically, if we were going to define that, I would say it's your ritual. It's like a ritualized practice of devotion. It's part of your whole yoga practice or your whole spiritual practice, okay? And you can do it in groups, so you could do it by yourself. Most people do it in groups because it can get really elaborate. But we're going to talk about just, a little bit of each, the really elaborate temple community space and your personal practice. So yeah, this little thing here, you fill it with water, is one of the simpler things that you can have inside. And then this little spoon that usually goes, and you take it and you'll pour. It's like sometimes you wash the murtis with it. And then you might find like a dia, like a little, this one's like a pre-made one that we actually got for Diwali. My mom found it in Liberty Avenue. If you're in New York, Liberty Avenue is like Little Guyana. It has like all the things and stuff. It has all like the shops, the spiritual shops, and sari and kurta shops and bangles and jewelry and all that stuff, and of course West Indian food, all the palauri and tamarind sawa and roti and stuff that you want. So basically, yeah, you'll have like a little dia sometimes, it's not always the case. Maybe you'll have something lit. And then a tari, right? So there are different sizes. My mom would not be happy with the condition of this one. Hers are really shiny and nice. I use mine a lot, and this one has incense dust all over it. But basically this size, or sometimes like bigger, and you can either put your murti in it to bathe it when it's time, or sometimes you place the dia in it, and at the end of a ceremony you pass it over the murti 3 times, so the fire is cleansing and connecting to the deity and its energy, and then you take it and you place the energy of the fire over you by just passing your hand over it and then over your body. Another thing you'll find is agarbatti, or incense, right? So this one's the Krishna incense here. And also this is from Liberty Avenue. Shout out, I guess, a lot to Liberty Avenue right now. It's one of the places that, I'll be able to find these things when I'm not buying stuff online. And so you'll have like maybe a stick of incense there that you'll light for the deity and for your prayer, and a little incense stand. This was my grandmother's. It's really cute. It's like a little brass lotus, also filled with incense dust right now. And then I have a little bell. Oh, and this spray, right? This is usually this is a Shakti spray. This one specifically is for a Shakti spray. And then you'll have malas. Like this one's just from the 99-cent store, but sometimes we string together real flowers or fake flowers and we put them around the deity like this. So to, just offer up in devotion. So those are a few things you'll find on an altar. And especially if you're doing a puja, you'll see those things. There's other more elaborate ones. Okay, so now we're going to talk about pujas from personal to communal. Okay, so we have the personal puja, which is something simple that maybe you do your daily practice at your altar and you pray, you light some incense, you light a candle, you light a diya, as they say, which is sometimes actually ghee inside of one of these little things, and it has like a cotton wick, and you light that, right? We do it on Diwali too, right? Dipavali, however you say it, which is the festival of lights, the festival of Lakshmi and bringing light into your space. And then we have, you'll maybe do something simple like that. You'll pray, you connect, and you leave it at that. It's not always something big. And then let's say it's Navratri, right? Like I made a video about Navratri if you want to check that out. That's the 9 nights of worshiping Durga in all her forms. So Devi, Shakti. So we'll worship, Chandraganta, Brahmacharini, Kali, Kalarachi, Durga, and sometimes people worship Lakshmi and Saraswati and so forth. So when you're doing that practice, there might be very specific things. You'll have a bell around that you'll ring. You'll have the spray for Shakti. Sometimes you're fasting. The altar may stay up in a certain particular way for 9 nights, and you might use this more where you're bathing the murtis and you're preparing them and you're specifically chanting for Devi. So different Hindus practice different things. In Indo-Caribbean culture, a lot of people practice like Islam, there are Muslim people, there's Buddhists, there's Christian, there's a lot of Christian people, there's Hindu people, and there's Shaktas, right? So Shaktas are the Kali worshippers of Hinduism. So Shaktism is still Hinduism and it is Tantra. There's a lot of different avenues you can come to with this practice. And in Indo-Caribbean culture, like, there's a lot of colorism and demonization of Kali worshippers, and not everyone is raised with Kali worship in their home, right? And there's a lot of political and social reasons for that. When we do set up an altar, when we actually do worship Shakti, your altar may look a little different than if you were to have a traditional Hindu altar, right? But Shakta worshippers still worship Krishna and still worship Hanuman and Ganesha and Shiva. But I do know that there's some stigma on Kali worship. And it's important that we start to look at this as like a reclaiming of our heritage, because the divine feminine is an important part of our practice. Shakta worship is really important to us claiming all aspects of our roots and to decolonize and decast and release us from like this patriarchal colorist way of looking at our practices, and to get all the information. Like, as colonized people, we lose a lot of information, and we also preserve some information. So people who continue to practice Shaktism and Kali worship that know the Mariamma Talatu, which is in Tamil, that's a special thing to still be able to speak a prayer in Tamil, right? It's like, that's really powerful, and we shouldn't wash that away and demonize it, creating like a fear to like, you know, cast this group and this group as this, or people who do this as this. It's just separating us from like understanding ourselves. So going into another type of puja, so the other type of puja you could do is in a temple space, and the temple space is where the community meets, and there are pujaris and you know, pandits. Those are like the priests and priestesses who perform the puja for you, and you basically gain the benefits of their worship. Like, so they do it on big murtis, like huge murtis, huge, you know, like there's drumming, there's singing, there's harmonium playing, there's like, you know, there's all these different elements of song and mantra and prayer and, you know, just community coming together. Sometimes they'll feed you, and the food has been blessed by the practice. And it's just a way for us to keep connecting to each other and have community. And yeah, there's that tradition that's been going on. And then the other one would be your house puja, right? Your jandi. Some of us call it a jandi, where it's like you have a pandit or a pujari come to your house, and they do a specific practice where you bless a flag. And you'll see this in indo-caribbean households, like in the front yard you'll see like flags, like, and their prayer flags are sometimes red, or they have like an image of a deity on them, and they're on a bamboo stick. That has been blessed during a ceremony where you invite your community or family and friends, or, you know, people on your block or whatever, and you give elders gifts, and, you know, you do a prayer, a ritual, a ceremony to bless your home for the year, you know, or maybe it's for a marriage or a birthday or whatever, a special time, you know. And then there's pujas that you do on your new car, or like, you know, when a baby is born and things like that. It's like there's all these different pujas, and pujas are just time where we take to practice a ceremony or ritual to invite spirit into whatever we're doing, you know. We're welcoming a life into the world, we're starting a new adventure, we're, you know, starting a business, we're just starting a new year. However you feel like this is a special time that you want to talk with spirit, and you want people to witness it, and you want community for it, and accountability and connection and all those things, that's a puja that is like, you know, one that you'll have it that's more public in temple or in your home. Okay, and so a lot of us, let's say we're in quarantine now. For a lot of us, if you're watching this video during like COVID quarantine, like this is a really good way to develop a relationship with your personal practice and your home altar. So we'll talk a little bit about what altars could look like for you, and what altars look like for Indo-Caribbean people. And I can't speak for all Indo-Caribbean people, but basically, you know, there's this like a little bit in this book. It's called Kali Woman, by Gayatri Bahadur, and I'm gonna read just this like quick little piece, okay? And it's about her family coming into America and moving into Manhattan. Okay, my grandmother, who had crossed the border crawling on her belly to join us by then, made the fifth. From the fire escape, we could see the Twin Towers. Despite the panoramic view of Manhattan, our apartment promoted claustrophobia. The door swung into the windowless bathroom to reveal my mother balanced on the edge of the bathtub, attacking clothes in sudsy water, pummeling hand-me-down jeans until they screeched, beating the ugly green corduroys, and made me look awkward as I felt. She nearly fainted once, with the fumes of Clorox bleach concentrated in the tiny room. The gods were all crowded, too. They had been forced inside. From the airy temples, perfumed by zinnias, they were driven into the closet. the linen closet in the bedroom to be precise. There was a box of Barbie dolls on the bottom shelf, and nightly the rats would make incisions into the pale plastic of their perfectly formed legs. On the top shelf rested frames printed of the gods, elephant trunk Ganesha, the remover of obstacles, Hanuman, the monkey with the mountain in his palm, and Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge. So there is something really special, about that. Also, I wanted to share that there were a lot of photos that we hang up to. I didn't add that part, but it was in there. There's a lot of these images, like you'll see like postcard like images, or like the one that I have back here. This one's made of cloth, and those images also like will line the inside of these like little closets that we have, and that evolved into just getting like a little glass and wooden box or whatever in your house, and you put all your gods in there. And of course that was different in Guyana where they're outside, or different in South Asia, in India, wherever our ancestors might have been from, like where they might be more outdoors or in bigger or in temples or not so hidden away. But in America, there was a lot of hiding of these practices, regardless of what was really what's happening now. Like, oh, let me pause for a second. There is a lot of, yeah. It really makes me emotional actually to think about the fact that there's so much hiding of these gods and goddesses. Like I come from a space and people and family where there has to be a lot of secrets for your safety, for your survival. And I think part of the secrecy was also in our spirituality, like how much we had to hide our practices, fear of shame or hurt or violence. And that's why it was so complicated to start to see, like, white men and women claim these practices and make money off of them in America. It really hurt my heart and my spirit to see something like that. Total disregard. And I think it's why it's important for more of us, more Indo-Caribbean people, more West Indian people, more queer and trans people of color, for us to claim our practices and to look at our roots and discover our roots, because we need to talk about these things and we need to heal. It doesn't mean you have to be like in the book, by Gayatri Bahadur. She says, false beliefs. Like, she almost got like lulled into these false beliefs where her mom's bhajans, her singing to these gods. And that's real. Like my connection to Shaktaism is actually my reclaiming of my roots, where I get to still have part of my heritage that isn't actually always attached to this notion of control and hierarchy and patriarchy and casteism. And I get to look at it in another way and still be close to my ancestors, and still be close to my heritage. And that is really special. I think there's so much to find out. Okay, so before I go, I'm going to share a little bit about how to get your practice started. If you're not Hindu, if you weren't raised Hindu, if you weren't raised as a tantrika, if you don't practice any of the Eastern practices that I talk about on this channel, and you are feeling drawn to it. And if you are a person of color, I feel like all these spiritualities for people who have been disempowered, who have been enslaved, who have been indentured, who have been colonized, who have, felt that pain, that like these practices are here. Grab at whatever you can and whatever comes your way in terms of spirituality, and see what works for you. Get in touch with it. See what makes sense for you. I've had different people ask me, like, can I use this practice? Should I use this practice? I'm not the authority on Hindu practices. I'm not the authority on Shaktism. I share what I believe, what I think, and that's all I really can do. And I share it from my lens, okay? From my cultural, spiritual, queer-ass lens, okay? So this is the whole thing. If you're a white person watching this, and you feel drawn to Hinduism, you feel drawn to Shaktism, you feel drawn to Shaivism and all that, you know, spirituality is here for all of us, right? The deities don't really care. They're all here. They're here to help. They're here to bring us to a better place. And they're actually here to create a world that is of a high vibration, right? They're here to assist us to become better people. So when you're drawn into the energy of these deities, capitalizing on it, or, you know, becoming the authority on practice that isn't from your personal lineage, is problematic and the opposite of what you're doing. So if you're feeling drawn to the deities, sure, I'm sure you got excited. You want to be like, I got chosen, whatever. If Kali is coming to you, for instance, chances are she's trying to help you. But like claiming her, putting her face on like mugs and then selling them, you know, starting your yoga practice and calling it Kali yoga, I'm just, yeah, don't. And with that, I'll share now how to start your altar. Number one, you need to meditate, okay? You need to have a practice of meditation. Spirit is in the ethers. Spirit is in everything, okay? And maybe you'll start to build a relationship with a deity, and that deity comes in forms of like plants and flowers and like trees and animals and relationships with others and all those things. So if you don't feel like you know what deity it is, don't rush it. Start to think about what it is that you're feeling. Like, are you trying to get in touch with love and compassion? Then maybe it is Krishna. Maybe you're trying to move through some really difficult obstacles in your life. Then it's Ganesha. Maybe you are dealing with addiction, or you're feeling unsafe, or you know, you're a sex worker and you're really challenged by the environment that you're in right now, and you want to know that you're safe. Maybe it's Kali, you know, like maybe you're trying to push through in a toxic family experience and Durga comes through. Like, the deities all have different associations. Maybe you're trying to have a peaceful meditative practice and you want your practice to be watched over and kept safe. And then maybe it's Shiva, right? These guides here there are protectors, and they will protect different things that we're working on, okay? So with that being said, your meditation practice is the beginning of your altar. Okay, you want to set something up, like you have to sit with peace. So I encourage you, before you get a murti, especially if you're not connected to a deity. If you're connected to a deity, get the murti, set it up, you know, it's time. But first, start with a simple thing. Start with a glass of water or a candle, you know, and meditate on that. Or just, you know, light a stick of incense and put a glass of water out and meditate on that. Like, meditate on the image of the ocean or a mountain or the sky or whatever, and connect to nature in that way. Now, what a Hindu altar looks like is we'll have a deity on it. It will have all those things that I shared in the video, you know, a bell, incense, the little guglet, the, you know, diya, all those things might show up in there, but it can be really simple. It can just be an image. It can just be a little card with the image on it. If you remember, and what I share a lot in these videos about being people who were colonized, we didn't have like expensive, elaborate altars. You know, sometimes you have a tiny postcard inside of a thing, and that's your, you know, you set it up on a little thing in the corner and you pray there. You know, you pray wherever you can because the spirit is inside of you. Okay, we set up these elaborate things to remember something that we have within us. Okay, so if you don't have access to that, don't go figuring it out. Those things will come, you know. But when you start simple, and you know, I said you should try the short intro to mantras video that I have. When you start simple and you connect to the universe, you connect to the divine source, that guide, whatever way they are going to manifest, they will start to speak to you. Speak to your ancestors, set up an ancestor altar, which can be like a picture of an ancestor or a representation, or just a candle, you know, a white candle and a glass of water and a conversation, because your ancestors actually will connect you to the deities that you're really meant to work with, you know. And if you're drawn in, let's say you are feeling drawn into a deity very specifically, let's say it's Shiva, and you feel very drawn to Shiva, get a little murti of him or get a Shiva lingam, and what you'll do is you'll wash him with water, and you can find out like maybe a good moon cycle for that, you know. I would like, for instance, if you're working with Kali, the new moon is good. When you're working with Krishna, the full moon is good. You know, you want to wash the murti with water, and then feed it milk and honey and turmeric. If you don't do regular milk, you could do almond milk. It's fine. I do almond milk. I think it's fine. And offerings, right? You can offer a flower, you can offer fruit, and what you do is you pray while the fruit and the flower is there. Especially if you put fruit. If you put fruit, pray and do the mantra of that deity. If you put an orange in front of this picture of Ganesha and you're chanting Om Gan Ganapate Namaha over and over, 108, right? 108 times on the mala, you will imbue the fruit with the mantra and then you eat it afterwards, okay? So offerings can be eaten. There's so much information. There's so many intricacies. You know, a lot of these things get learned from just being around other people who practice and slowly getting into that community. And I hope that we can build something together. I want that space, you know, but essentially we're in the digital realm. We're connecting. We're starting here, okay? And I'm just, yeah, hopefully this was helpful on some level. Start with your meditation. Start with your meditation and let the rest unfold. You don't have to rush it. I hope that this video offered you some insight into what a puja is, different kinds of pujas, and what you might find in an Indo-Caribbean altar, okay? Thank you so much for tuning in. I love you all so much. I'm really, really, really grateful to be doing this work. Please, please subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. Please come back and check in again. I love to journey with you.